censured. Well, that didn't happen yet for his views on the abduction phenomena, but he also is a Pulitzer Prize winning writer. And not ironically, I knew John's work some years before there was any connection or he had any interest in ufology, because I worked for a wonderful British-based organization that Henrietta would be aware of, Samaritans International, which has walk-in centers all over the UK and all over what we used to call the Commonwealth countries. It's a crisis intervention group, and they had a few offices in the States, and I worked out of the New York office on and off for 8 years. Essentially the busiest suicide hotline in America. And on night shift, sometimes, you go for an hour or so without a call. And there was a small library of books, not surprisingly, on usually crisis and psychology. And there was a great book there, in fact, a very important book on adolescent suicide, which I read and really was quite impressed by, that was written by a Harvard psychiatrist named John Mack. But he won his Pulitzer Prize for psychiatric biography on T.E. Lawrence of Arabia. He's a brilliant man.
Wow.
And he had learned that there was a painter in New York who thought that aliens were abducting people and hypnotizing them. And John was a very kind soul, but he felt that this was, obviously somebody who was a bit unhinged and perhaps even doing work that was not good, and arranged to come to New York to meet Bud. And as he told me sometime after, because I was there that day that he arrived, and he treated me with great deference and respect because I was Bud's assistant, me with my BFA in painting and film history. But it was a life-changing day for John. Bud basically opened up his files to John, and John was absolutely involved in the work, literally 180 degrees, the same way Dave Jacobs had been some years before when he came to meet Bud, because he thought he was probably out of his mind as well. But Mac, he was a brilliant intellect, and a lot of people felt when he died that he may have been murdered. And I'm not a conspiracist, but you don't have to be a conspiracist to know that history is defined by conspiracies in part. And now we're in, unfortunately, a golden age of this madness. But a lot of people rightly felt that John may have met with foul play. I was actually in England at the time and not far. In fact, I was in Suffolk at the time, heading to London the next day to stay as a house guest with Nick Pope. And I thought, my God, is it possible? And I made it my business after the fact to get hold of the court records, background information on this driver, fourth suspended license, more than twice the legal limit, inebriated, and tried to, got the locations and tried to put myself in the position of, if this was some kind of professional hit, and there was a guy on the street, a spotter on the roof, a totally Manchurian candidated out driver, etc. To coordinate it, to have this guy come around the corner at the right moment when John decided spontaneously that he was going to cross the street at that time. Basically, had given a talk for the Lawrence Society, and it had been so well received that they asked him to continue it after dinner. I think, sadly, it's not very sexy, it's not very exotic, but as an American that's visited the UK well over 20 times and should know better, to this day, I still sometimes am about to look the wrong way when I cross the street. And I think that's what happened with John. And that's the way it went. And I published around it, and, that's the way it was. But Bud was the right man for the right moment, was a brilliant writer, was a humanist, was more concerned with these people who were, in many cases, quite traumatized. John, on the other hand, made no bones about the fact that what interested him most from the moment he picked up on the reality of this, everything from, positive beatific contacts to people who had been abducted, who were having a problem adjusting to this reality. What interested him most passionately was the potential for positive human transformation. Like a lot of
Right.
people who came of age in the 60s, he had kind of given up to a degree on the Western model and looked more to the East for solutions. So he was open to the
Yeah.
transformative aspects of this and was doing it right up until he died.
Okay. We should wrap up soon, but I want Roderick to ask any last questions there, or any comments and questions, Roderick, and then I'll wrap up with Henrietta. So yes, go ahead, Roderick.
I want to kind of just go back to something you mentioned, Peter, earlier about, of course, the long anticipation of this 180-day countdown that we're all looking for. Since you kind of mentioned, like what most of us think, that they may not give us much disclosure at all, how do you suggest they're going to cover up the cover up this time, since everybody knows that we're waiting
Brilliant.
for them?
Well, that's a great question. In fact, to unwind a few years ago was we can't keep the lid on it anymore. There are too many articulate people out there. There are too many quality publications coming out. There are too many good lecturers. There are too many good documentaries. And now, with this whole media thing turning around on us, the best we can do is try to control the flow, to slow things down here and there while we try to figure out what the hell we need to do here. But it's coming undone. And we can't keep the lid on it. What we can do is be a bit distracting here and there, stretch things out. But there are more and more people, I'm convinced, within the establishment, within certain offices and agencies, within civilian and military intelligence, who are the people whose names we don't know. They are the ones who move the chess pieces around the board, who have been infighting for decades, starting under Truman. There were people, I am sure, who wanted 6 months after Roswell, the original 12 members of MJ12, and make no mistake, that group was real as we are, who, let's go to the American people. And I think if it had been left to Truman, he would have done it. But I think he fell under the influence of people who were these people? They were well connected, powerful, primarily middle-aged white guys with a history in government who really liked, on a certain level, now being truly the 12 wise men around Truman. If he goes public with this, we lose our, all the cachet that we know that we have. Basically, this is all a stalling pattern to admit we don't know what the hell's going on. We are not the biggest flea on the back of the cosmic dog. Everything that we had been brought up to understand is now open to question. We're not alone in the universe. We know that now. But mass panic, the stock market crashing, a scare thrown into the petrochemical industry because they're not running on coal or gasoline. And it worked brilliantly for decades. So I think there will be another release of information coming at us in a few months. But let's think logically here. Even if the government, for lack of a more descriptive term, was ready to do this, we've got more important immediate stuff on our plate right now. We have a new president who I think is doing his best to try to stem the tide on this damn pandemic. We have an economy teetering on the edge of collapse worldwide. We're still hanging in there. And the answer is not just, unfortunately, like Texas is going to do starting next week, to open everything up again. I'm getting political here and not my intention, but we have plenty on our plate. We have infrastructure problems that should have been addressed decades ago, but at least should have started 5 years ago, and on down the list. This is not a priority for the President of the United States, even if he has been fully briefed. And that's speculative. So it's going to be an exciting couple of years, but barring the unforeseen or them simply saying enough, we're pulling the plug on this. And I'll close with one thing because we are over time here. I'm not a huge science fiction reader. A lot of people think, oh, you're into UFOs, you must be a science fiction maniac. No, I've never been. But I've read a lot of the best literature. And of course, I'm a fan of science fiction films, from the ones we love because they're terrible, or the really great ones because they are great.
Yeah.
But some of the best models that I've been able to come up with to try to wrap my head around what's going on come from science fiction. It doesn't come from science. And there was what I would characterize, to be kind, a really mediocre miniseries from the 80s that was, for reasons beyond me, remade about 8 or 10 years ago, spending much more money and just as mediocre, called V, as in victory. You guys remember that? It basically, yeah, I mean, all of the aliens look like supermodels, and they're here to cure cancer and help us with everything. And it's, some old Jewish guy that figures out there's a problem here. And then it all breaks down, and we find out that under their silicone skins, they're reptoids, and that they eat mice and people, and, they do not mean us well. And for me, at that point, the whole thing degenerates into kind of a bad World War II resistance movies, and they're the Nazis, and the smart people on Earth are, the resistance fighters. However, it had one of the best science fiction premise beginnings, worthy of Jules Verne, worthy of Gene Roddenberry, of Isaac Asimov, the greatest science writers of all time, H.G. Wells. One morning, everybody wakes up, and there's a 1 mile across mothership hanging a mile up over the 60 biggest cities in the world. Game over. I love that. That would change everything. Skeptical?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Well, thank you. You're right. Maybe we're being prepared for that. Thank you. Henrietta, anything you want to add and comment or just finalize here?
Oh, yeah, no, I just want to say thank you to Peter. This was just utterly stimulating. And this is the thing. I do all your stories of John Mack too, because I love reading him, and I feel very...
he was a great guy as well as a great man. He was an awful lot of fun.
Well, that's what comes across. That's what comes across.
And
not only
Mike
is
Buddy
brilliant,
had a brilliant sense of humor.
Yeah, it just, I feel like I would love to. Yeah. And by the way, I'm in Mexico now and have been for this whole year, but I've lived in New York for 22 years. And I think that fits in actually to this whole subject, but that's another story. But I loved what you said about what he was most passionate about was this transformative aspect.
Yep,
this positive human transformation. Because I know, I feel that that's what this is. It is our expansion into a different kind of species.
Well, let's remember, I agree with you in part, but there are different intelligences with different agendas, I am convinced, and some of them ones we should be concerned about, at least one. Other ones, the grays and whatever they represent that I was so focused in on for so many years. There's a wonderful maxim, the Zen beginner, knowing that you know nothing and having it be okay. We know more than nothing. But if you're really honest with yourself, I always feel awkward or uneasy when people bring me on a show and say, you're an expert in UFOs. And I have to laugh because it's literally the greatest oxymoron imaginable. You're an expert in the unknown. And find another word.
But that's the whole thing. Yeah.
This is a very exciting time to be in this work, to be keeping an eye on it. It's moving quickly, and I think the speed is accelerating. And the best thing, I see my role in this as an educator. And I'm very happy to be involved in broadcasting right now and building a wider audience. And we can all be out there doing this work, and we are. in our
And
own ways. So
your radio show is on what station again?
thank you, Alan.
K-
KGRA, and you
Yeah.
can watch it live every Monday night from 7 to 9 by going to KGRA or KGRA-DB for digital broadcasting on YouTube, and thereafter find it in their archive. In my case, you go to KGRA on YouTube and then type in Meanwhile Here on Earth, and
Right.
ideally with the name of the guest, and you'll get it immediately.
Right.
Also, if you check my Facebook page, I post regularly when the shows are coming up, who the guests will be, what the link is. If you're driving, you can also listen to it by going to the KGRA website and listening live. And I hope a lot of you will join me there.
Well, we will. Thank you,
Alan,
Peter.
Can I say one more
Thank
thing,
you.
Alan?
Yes, and
Can
then
I
I
say
want
one
to
more
introduce
thing,
Roderick.
Peter?
Go
Yes.
ahead, Henrietta.
I just want,
No.
well, it's because it's really coming up for me that your next guest is Marla Fries, and I've come across her and I've had a session with her myself. Yeah, and I'm connected to a lot of psychics, and I think that that's a part of this. I just want to say to people out there that, you know, for me, I'm just going to come out of the closet with this, that, you know, the ESP and whatever that is, remote viewing, being able to see things you don't know why, I feel it's connected to this subject. So, you know, and that's very exciting because it means that we can all be connected in much deeper ways to everything and each other. Through our dreaming, through our telepathy. I think that it's all connected and it's a very beautiful thing. And I think this is one of the synchronicities.
This is what UFO world opens us up to, that the whole cosmos is a lot more mysterious. This is my book for those people watching, Making Contact, where, as Peter said, there is no whole understanding of what's going on. So that's why I put together 11 different essays from different aspects of this.
Yes.
And it gives you a little piece, like everyone having a piece of the elephant. Will we all put it together and see what the elephant looks like? I don't know.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
And I just want to also acknowledge Roderick, because every Tuesday and Thursday night Clubhouse, we are doing a dialogue. It's Roderick's Clubhouse. But I invite you, Peter, and Henrietta, and everyone watching to come. It's 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern. Find, what's the name of the club again, Roderick?
It is Extraterrestrial Evidence. And by the way, Peter, I'm in Texas, so yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Stay well,
Where
brother.
are you, Peter?
Where's Peter?
Where are you, Peter? Yeah. Are you in New York?
Well, New York City is my home. I love it. It's my hometown. But right now, I live center of the state, a few miles from beautiful Ithaca, New York, out in the New York State countryside.
Let's go visit Peter, Henrietta. We'll visit him.
Yes, well, I love it upstate. I would go every weekend. Yeah, for many years.
And make sure,
but
everyone, I'm sorry, who is listening, and you guys, let me tell you, and Alan would say it again, we need you on that Clubhouse. It is that app where people are just connected all over the world and they're talking, and you will be just shocked with the trauma, the emotion that people are dealing with right now. And we have a job, you know, to do. So.
Yeah. Well, it's a public forum.
I want to help anybody.
Yes, it's a public forum where anyone could come on and say, I had this experience and I haven't told anyone about it, or maybe they have. And you'll hear sympathetic understanding that welcome to the club, really, welcome to the Clubhouse here.
Yeah.
Because we are welcoming people to share, because like Henrietta and, well, Peter, years ago, the more you and me since 87, the more we talk about this, the more other people will say, you know, I had a strange experience. Even Scott Harney, who's producing this show, said he had a strange experience. There's a lot more.
That was amazing. He came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so we
And I
are
had an
opening,
ex-wife, so that was experience.
that was, we are opening the door to possibilities, and I really appreciate Peter's perspective as a historian,
Yes.
as an
Me
artist.
too.
And this is Roderick's link to the Clubhouse. This is his LinkedIn page. Thank you, Scott, for putting that up. But I appreciate everyone joining us and everyone online watching, because we want to wake people up to what's really going on here and what's really going on with who we are as human beings. And that's sort of the
Exactly.
take, if you get to read the book, Peter, the kind of humanist sort of perspective, how aliens sort of make us more human. They make us feel more of who we are, and they expand our possibilities. That's my take here. Is that something you agree with? Okay,
Absolutely.
great. All right. Thank you all. Thank you, my lovely co-host, Henrietta Weeks, who actually also has a chapter in the book, Making Contact. Thank you, Peter Robbins. Every week you can listen to him on the radio. And he has a lot more to say about his art, about creativity, about awakening to these other realities. And my good friend, Roderick Martin, every Tuesday and Thursday night, be there on Clubhouse. If you want an invite, email me at newrealities@earthlink.net. I'll send you an invite for the Clubhouse. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Alan Steinfeld for New Realities. And this is something I want to do every week with Henrietta. And we want to, the conversation, we can't have enough of this conversation, basically.
No.
Peter's just been a guest on 2 great shows. He was on Grant Cameron's show and Richard Dolan's show. So it's Peter's time to be out there and say everything he knows. And it's all of our time.
Yeah.
It's like, it was like, I guess, women's liberation or all these movements that liberated people. This is our time. Thank you all for being here. I'm Alan Steinfeld, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks for putting this together.
Yes, and